Billionaire's act of kindness. Hires homeless woman as date, then proposes in emotional twist. Most people would call him crazy. A billionaire in a custom suit stepping out of a luxury car to talk to a barefoot woman holding a cardboard sign. But what if that moment was the most honest thing he'd done in his entire life? She didn't speak. She didn't ask. She didn't beg. Anna stood on the corner of 6th and Main like a statue, weathered by wind and time, but never broken. Her sign said everything. Still human. Just invisible. People walked by as if she didn't exist. But she wasn't just surviving. She was holding on to something far more valuable than money. Dignity. That's what stopped Damien Carter's world in its tracks. From the back seat of his Bentley, on the way to another gala filled with polished lies and social games, he glanced out the window. His driver droned on about his schedule. Damien barely heard him. His eyes had landed on her, silent, still, and strangely powerful. It was like watching the power of kindness take physical form. She wasn't pleading for sympathy. She was radiating resilience. "Pull over," Damien said. The driver glanced up. "Sir." I said, "Pull over." Moments later, Damien was stepping out onto the sidewalk, drawing stares from strangers who couldn't imagine why a man like him would stop here. But Damien wasn't looking at them. He was walking straight toward Anna. "Hi," he said. She raised her eyes, cautious but curious. "I'm Damien." "Okay," she replied flatly. "I'm going to something fancy tonight. A gala. Overdressed, overfunded, and mostly fake," he said. "I'd like you to be my date." She stared at him. "You serious?" "Dead serious." "Why me?" He hesitated. "Because I've spent years surrounded by money, and I've never once seen someone look so real." Anna crossed her arms. "You looking for a redemption arc?" He smiled. "I'm looking for something honest. Something that makes this night feel like more than just another event." There was something raw in the silence between them. It wasn't a grand gesture. It was a random act of kindness, unplanned, and all the more powerful for it. "You got shoes in that car?" He glanced at her feet. "Yeah, and maybe a dress that doesn't sparkle." Her lip twitched. Almost a smile. "Fine, but I'm not changing who I am." "I'm counting on that," he said. She stepped into the car, not because she needed saving, but because something inside her recognized this moment for what it was, a rare kind of true-life kindness. Inside the car, she touched the fabric of the seat as if it might disappear. He watched her quiet, observant, not judging. "Why do this?" she asked. "Maybe I forgot how to connect," he said. "You reminded me. You're like the uplifting kind of human reminder that makes everything else feel artificial." She looked out the window. "Feels like a trap. Maybe it's just the first real thing I've done in years." It wasn't flirtation. It wasn't pity. It was the raw stuff that builds motivational real-life connections. The type of moment that doesn't belong in tabloids, but changes the people living it. As the car rolled toward the Regency Hotel, Anna's reflection in the window blurred against the glittering skyline. She was still the same woman who had stood barefoot an hour ago. But now, beside her sat a man who was beginning to understand the difference between wealth and worth. "You know," she said, "people think being poor makes you invisible. But sometimes being rich makes you blind." Damien turned toward her, eyes soft. "Not anymore." Outside, the city kept moving. Fast, loud, indifferent. Inside that car was something slow and sacred. A collision of two lives. An act that would one day be remembered not as charity, but as choice. The kind of moment built for emotional storytelling, not headlines. What began as one man's attempt to escape a hollow evening would become a ripple of kindness content, touching thousands, maybe millions. The media would twist it, dramatize it, but the truth would always be simpler. He saw her. She saw him back. And everything changed. Not because she needed rescuing, but because someone finally looked at her and didn't turn away. That's what inspirational content should be, not perfection, but presence. And all it took was 7 words. "Would you be my date tonight?" Anna had never sat in a car so quiet. Not silent, quiet. Soft leather. Soft lights. Soft music humming from hidden speakers. It was the kind of silence that didn't come from a lack of noise, but from a lack of fear. It unsettled her more than the cold street ever had. She ran her fingers across the door handle, half expecting it to vanish. Everything felt too fragile, too expensive, too unreal. Damien watched her, saying nothing. He didn't want to scare her with conversation. He'd already said the wildest thing of the night. "You'll need a dress," he said after a pause. Anna looked down at her layered hoodie and tattered skirt. This isn't gala ready. You're making it work, he said with a small smile. But I think we can find something warmer. She laughed, just once, and shook her head. You're insane. He didn't argue. He just told the driver to reroute to 5th and Franklin, one of the high-end boutiques still open for private fittings. She didn't protest. She didn't ask questions. But inside, her mind was spinning. Why her? Why now? Was this some elaborate prank? Some guilt-washed billionaire stunt? Or was this one of those rare helping others moments that weren't about press or publicity, but about something deeper, connection? They arrived at a boutique called Maison Fleur. Inside, it smelled like soft perfume and silence. The staff froze when Damien walked in with a barefoot woman wrapped in layers. He gave them a nod that said, "Yes, she's with me." Anna stood still as the stylists gathered around her. For a second, she looked like she might run. But then she caught her reflection, herself, framed by gold and velvet and light. Something raw stirred in her. "Choose anything you want," Damien said. "Or nothing. We can leave whenever." "I don't need to be Cinderella," she muttered. "This isn't about turning you into something you're not," he replied. "It's about making sure you don't freeze in there." That made her laugh again. Real laughter. The kind that made even the stylist blink back a tear. And in that moment, the shift began, not in clothing, but in presence. It wasn't a makeover. It was a real-life inspirational shift. One of those everyday hero moments where a person begins to recognize their own worth again. They chose a simple navy dress. Clean lines. Modest. Elegant. It fit like it was made for her, because it was it. Tailored in under an hour with hands that understood urgency. Shoes came next. Not heels. Simple black flats. When she stepped out of the fitting room, the room hushed. Damien looked up from his phone and stared. "You don't look different," he said softly. "Oh." Anna raised a brow. "You look seen." She bit her lip, unsure how to respond. But something shifted behind her eyes. Something unspoken. Like she was beginning to believe she was allowed to be in that room. They rode in silence to the gala. Anna stared out the window while Damien scrolled through event notes he would no longer care about by the end of the night. She broke the silence. "Why are you really doing this?" He looked up. "Because I needed someone to remind me that sincerity still exists." Anna tilted her head. "So this is about you?" "In part, yeah," he admitted. "But also look, people talk a lot about kindness like it's soft. Like it's charity. But you standing on that corner today with a sign and no shame? That was the most powerful thing I've seen all year. It was raw. It was honest. It was the kind of moment made for motivational real-life reflection. Not because it was dramatic, but because it was completely human." Anna's voice was quieter now. "You know what the hardest part of being invisible is?" He turned toward her. "What?" "It's not being forgotten. It's remembering who you used to be and wondering if that person still counts." Damien didn't say anything right away. "Then, you count. Maybe more than most of the people we're about to meet." When they pulled up to the Regency, cameras flashed before the valet even opened the door. Damien stepped out first. Anna hesitated, staring at the velvet ropes, the gowns, the glint of chandeliers inside. He turned and offered her his hand. "You don't owe them a version of yourself," he said. "Just walk beside me." She stepped out. Flashes exploded. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Who was she? Why was he with her? But Anna didn't shrink. She stood tall, shoulders back, chin lifted, barefoot spirit tucked into black flats and a navy dress. It was the kind of entrance that would become part of a feel-good headline, though it wasn't crafted for attention. It was born of one man's attempt to rewrite what wealth meant, and one woman's decision to let herself be seen again. Inside the ballroom, whispers followed them like shadows. But Damien didn't let go of her hand. Anna didn't flinch. She walked past diamond necklaces and designer gowns with the poise of someone who had known real hardship and survived it. And behind them, the whispers started to shift. Some sneered. Others softened. But many just watched, unknowingly witnessing the start of something more powerful than any speech or donation that night. This was positive storytelling, the kind that quietly unravels assumptions and rewrites what strength looks like. Because kindness didn't enter the room on a stage. It walked in wearing navy blue. And it changed everything. The car door opened, and the cold night air met her first. But Anna didn't shiver. She hesitated only for a second as flashes from cameras sparked like tiny storms ahead of her. Reporters craned their necks. Influencers checked their angles. It was the usual pretense, what passed for glamour in a world built on perfection. Then Damien held out his hand. Not like a prince in a fairy tale, but like a man who was certain of one thing in a world full of fakes, that Anna belonged right beside him. She stepped out. Gasps rippled through the crowd like a skipped heartbeat. Who is she? Where's the model? Is this a PR stunt? But Anna heard none of it. Her focus was on her footing. One step, then another. Shoulders back, chin up. She wasn't here to impress them. She wasn't here for attention. She was here because someone had looked at her and seen a human being worth walking beside. And that's exactly what Damien did. No introduction, no explanation. Just a billionaire and a simple woman walking hand in hand into a world that wasn't built for people like her. The grand ballroom doors opened. Crystal chandeliers hung like frozen galaxies above them. Waiters moved like clockwork, trays balanced with elegance. Every guest looked polished to perfection, their laughter too loud, their smiles too fixed. Then the murmurs began. A man from the financial press whispered, "That's Damien Carter's date?" A woman in pearls scoffed, "She looks normal." But others, more observant, watched with something deeper in their eyes. Curiosity, and in some, admiration. Because while others wore glittering gowns and carefully curated confidence, Anna wore quiet courage. The kind of strength that doesn't sparkle but still blinds. As they made their way through the crowd, Damien greeted people with practiced ease, introducing Anna only by name. Not a guest, not a +1, not someone I'm helping. Just, "This is Anna." And she shook hands. Not as a project, but as a person. She was beginning to understand that this moment wasn't about money or status. It was about reclaiming space. She wasn't a guest here. She was a presence. A woman approached them, slim, sharp, smiling in a way that didn't reach her eyes. "So, Damien," she said, tilting her head toward Anna, "is this part of your new kindness campaign?" Damien didn't flinch. "No campaign. Just a date." The woman raised an eyebrow. "You always had a taste for the unconventional." Anna didn't wait to be defended. "And I've always had a taste for honesty," she said calmly. "Nice dress." The woman blinked, caught off guard. Anna moved on. That was the moment people began to realize she wasn't overwhelmed. She was observing. She saw the cracks in the performances. She saw the servers ignored, the forced laughs, the couples pretending. She lived enough real life to recognize what was fake. This wasn't just an appearance at a gala. It was the quiet unfolding of a true motivational shift in a room that desperately needed one. Damien watched her carefully, like a man watching someone rewrite his understanding of value. Near the stage, a young woman in a black dress, likely an assistant or intern, accidentally dropped a tray of glasses. A sharp sound of glass shattering rang out. Heads turned, frowns appeared. Then Anna moved. Before the staff could react, she was on her knees beside the intern, helping gather the fragments. "You okay?" Anna asked. The girl nodded, cheeks red. "They'll probably fire me." Anna smiled. "Then let's not let them see." Damien stepped beside her, subtly blocking the view of the scene. A waiter joined, then another. Within seconds, the mess was gone. The moment passed, but not for the intern, who looked at Anna like she just witnessed an everyday act of heroism. "You didn't have to do that," Damien said quietly as they walked away. "Yes, I did," Anna replied. "That's how we hold people up when the world tries to knock them down." He said nothing, but in his chest, something shifted. This wasn't charity. It was true life kindness. The kind that doesn't need a spotlight. The kind that rewires you from the inside. A few minutes later, Damien was asked to take his seat near the front. A placard with his name rested next to a folded program. He turned to Anna. "They'll want me to speak later." "Are you going to tell them what you did tonight?" she asked. "I don't know," he said honestly. "Maybe I'll tell them what you did." She smiled faintly, brushing a curl behind her ear. "Make it a good one. Something that belongs in a playlist of inspirational content." "You think this is inspirational?" "I think the bar's pretty low," she said. "But yeah, maybe." Above them, soft jazz filled the air. Glasses clinked. The crowd buzzed. But for Damien, the noise faded. He was looking at a woman who, hours ago, was invisible to the city. And now, she was its most real person. No filters. No PR angle. Just presence. Anna wasn't pretending to belong, she was proving that she always had. The night wasn't over. There would still be a speech. Still whispers. Still judgment. But right now, Damien was certain of one thing. The most powerful act of kindness he'd ever performed wasn't giving someone a chance. It was being humble enough to accept the gift of someone else's truth. And that truth, wrapped in navy fabric and barefoot grace, was changing everything. The ballroom lights dimmed slightly, and soft jazz melted into something slower, deeper, more intimate. Couples were drifting toward the dance floor, gliding in perfect rhythm as though they had rehearsed their entire lives for this performance. Damien sat beside Anna, both of them silent, watching the elegance unfold like a well-practiced illusion. The dresses shimmered, the tuxedos blended together, and the conversation spun in predictable loops. "They all look so comfortable here," Anna said quietly, her voice more observation than envy. "They do," Damien replied. "But I've learned that comfort and authenticity don't always hold hands." Anna raised an eyebrow, clearly surprised by his honesty. He stood up slowly and turned toward her, offering his hand. "Dance with me." She stared at it. "I don't waltz." "You don't have to. Just move with me. Like we're making it up." She hesitated, but curiosity outweighed fear. "Okay," she whispered. They walked together toward the floor, unnoticed at first. But as they stepped onto the polished wood under the golden lights, heads began to turn. Damien Carter, the headline billionaire, dancing not with a model, nor a mogul's daughter, but with a simple woman no one could name. Anna placed her hand in his, cautious, unsure. His other hand found the small of her back. They began to sway, slow, awkward at first, then smoother, more certain. For the first time all night, neither of them felt out of place. "You're good at this," she murmured. "I've been to a lot of galas," he said. "But this is the first one I wanted to remember." She looked up at him, puzzled. "Why me?" He considered it. "Because you were the only person today who didn't want anything from me. And maybe because I saw something in you that reminded me what I've forgotten." Anna laughed softly. "What, humility?" "No," he said. "Humanity." They kept moving. Around them, whispers returned like shadows creeping under doors. But this time, they didn't matter. This was no performance. This was connection, honest, fragile, rare. The kind of moment that lives in emotional storytelling, where what's unsaid carries more weight than any choreographed speech. The kind that becomes one of those true motivational shifts you never saw coming. A photographer near the stage raised his camera. Damien looked over and shook his head, once. The man lowered the lens. "No photos. Not tonight." "What are they thinking?" Anna asked, glancing at the crowd. "That you're either a genius or a scandal," Damien said. "And what are you thinking?" "That this is the first real night I've had in a long time." The music swelled around them, but they danced as if it were silence. Theirs was a rhythm formed not by steps but by stillness, two people moving through the same moment for different reasons, and somehow finding meaning in the middle. "You're not who I thought you'd be," Anna said after a long pause. Damien looked down at her. "Neither are you." She smirked. "Let me guess. You thought I'd be a tragic project with a heart of gold and no agency?" He winced. "A little. And now I think you might be one of the strongest people I've ever met." The lights dimmed further. The dance slowed. Around them, guests clapped politely as the music faded. Anna stepped back, but Damien held her hand for a second longer. "Thank you," he said. "For what?" "For not letting this be just another staged kindness." As they returned to their table, something subtle shifted in the room. Where there had been judgment, now there was curiosity. Where there had been whispers, now there was reflection. One man and one woman had disrupted the performance, not with drama, but with dignity. Later, they sat with coffee and dessert as conversation swirled around them. One of the event organizers approached Damien, clipboard in hand. "You're scheduled to speak after the next toast." Anna looked at him. "You don't have to," she said. "I want to," Damien replied. "But only if I can tell the truth." He glanced at her, and for the first time that evening, she looked unsure, not because she was afraid of what he might say, but because she was starting to feel something deeper, that this night wasn't about charity at all. It was about visibility, respect, realness, and that was far more terrifying. Anna had survived the streets. She had survived being invisible, but now being seen, that was new. That was brave. Outside, the city glowed with indifference. But inside the ballroom, something rare was taking shape. It wasn't just a feel-good moment. It wasn't just a headline for inspirational content YouTube or some viral act of kindness video. It was one of those uplifting moments where two people from opposite sides of. Because this wasn't just about a billionaire dancing with a homeless woman. It was about what happens when someone forgotten dares to step forward. And someone powerful chooses to walk beside them. And neither of them looks away. The final course was cleared, the clinking of silverware replaced by the soft chime of crystal toasts and rising conversation. The gala was settling into its final act, the speeches. The part where the wealthy leaned into microphones and reminded each other how generous they all were. Damien hated this part. He hadn't planned to speak. But tonight felt different. There was something in the air, unsaid, electric. It wasn't just the whispers or the curiosity about Anna. It was something deeper. A shift. A quiet confrontation of values. The room, for once, felt unsettled, and it needed to stay that way. The event host stepped onto the small stage. Lights dimmed slightly, and the crowd hushed. And now, we're honored to welcome a man who needs no introduction. Please welcome Mr. Damien Carter. Polite applause filled the room as Damien stood. Anna watched him from their table, unsure what he would say, but somehow trusting him to say it honestly. He stepped onto the stage, adjusted the mic, and paused. No jokes. No rehearsed opening. Just breath. I've given a lot of speeches in this room, he began. And most of them sounded like the last one. A round of applause for our causes. A polite bow. A generous donation. And everyone goes home with the feeling they've done something good. A few uncomfortable chuckles rippled through the crowd. But tonight, I don't want to talk about what we've done. I want to talk about what we've missed. He glanced toward Anna, locking eyes for just a moment. On my way here, I met someone. A woman standing on a sidewalk holding a sign. She didn't ask for help. She didn't beg. She just stood there, with more grace than most people wear with diamonds. Now the room was silent. Her name is Anna. And yes, she's here tonight. Not because I rescued her. Not because I'm trying to prove a point. But because I needed someone to remind me what humanity actually looks like. Anna sat frozen, her breath shallow, unsure if she should disappear or stand taller. I've built a life of luxury, Damien continued. But somewhere along the way, I lost touch with what matters. With sincerity. With compassion. With the kind of quiet resilience that isn't glamorized in magazines or praised on social media. He paused again, letting the silence stretch. This wasn't a grand act of charity. It wasn't some publicity stunt. It was a moment of honesty. A moment where I chose to stop seeing people as roles or headlines and just see them as people. A ripple moved through the room. Genuine reflection, a shifting of postures. Some averted their eyes. Others looked straight at Anna. This woman, he said, motioning to her, reminded me what strength looks like. Not loud, not prideful, just enduring. And tonight, I want to honor that strength, not with applause, not with attention. He stepped off the stage. Anna's eyes widened. People turned in their chairs. Murmurs rose. Damien walked toward her table with slow, certain steps. Anna rose to meet him instinctively, not knowing why, only that something irreversible was about to happen. He took her hands, but with intention. Then he knelt. Gasps echoed. Flashbulbs lit the room, and the world shifted. Anna, he said, voice low but unwavering, you walked into a room that was never designed for you, and you did it with grace, with honesty, and with strength. You made me remember who I want to be. So I'm not asking for a second date. I'm asking for every day after this one. He opened a small box. A simple ring. No excess. Just elegant truth. Will you marry me? Anna didn't move for a moment. Her breath caught. The room waited. Finally, she smiled small, disbelieving, real. You're serious? She whispered. I've never been more serious about anything. She looked around the room, saw the tears in some eyes, the shock in others, and the wonder in her own. Then she nodded. Yes. Applause erupted, messy, emotional, sincere. Some guests stood. Some wiped their eyes. Even the servers at the edge of the room clapped. It wasn't just a proposal. It was a disruption. A confrontation. A healing. Because in a room designed to praise wealth and image, something deeper had happened. An act of humility. Of risk. Of radical, unpolished kindness. The kind that becomes the heartbeat of inspirational moments. The kind that lives in true motivational reflection, emotional storytelling, and quietly becomes one of those acts of kindness that people replay over and over, not for glamour, but for hope. Anna held Damien's hand as he stood. They didn't kiss. They didn't perform. They just stood side by side, seen, not as billionaire and beggar, but as two people who had chosen to reach across the space the world had put between them. And that, more than the speech, more than the ring, was what changed the room. Not a fairy tale, just a moment of real connection in a world starved for it. They left the gala in silence. No cameras followed them out the side entrance. No reporters screamed their names. Damien had arranged for discretion, and Anna had accepted it without asking. The moment had been enough. The city outside hadn't changed. Horns still blared. People still stared at their phones. The sidewalks were still cracked, but something inside Anna had shifted. She held Damien's hand in the backseat of the car. Not tightly, not nervously, just enough to remind herself that this was real. He looked at her. "You okay?" She nodded. "I'm not sure what just happened, but, yeah, I think I'm okay." Online, the story was already spreading. The headlines varied. Billionaire proposes to formerly homeless woman at gala. Kindness or publicity stunt. Damien Carter's shocking onstage proposal. From sidewalk to spotlight, the engagement that has everyone talking. But Anna didn't read them. She didn't care. Because she knew the truth. This wasn't about spectacle. It wasn't a charity case wrapped in a ring. It was something fragile and honest. Something that didn't need to trend. It just needed to exist. The next morning, she returned to the same street corner where Damien had found her. Not to beg, not to stand, but to say goodbye. A woman she'd known, Marla, was already there, holding a similar cardboard sign. Anna handed her a fresh thermos of coffee. "It's going to be cold later." Marla squinted. You're the one from the internet." "Yeah," Anna said, brushing her hair back. "That's me. But I'm still just me." "You getting out?" "I think so." Marla looked down. "Good for you." Anna hesitated, then took off her jacket, the soft, warm one Damien had given her after the gala, and placed it around Marla's shoulders. "I won't forget where I came from," she said. "And I won't forget who I met here." That act, simple, quiet, unfilmed, was the purest reflection of true life kindness. The kind that didn't make headlines. The kind that didn't require a camera crew. It was a random act of kindness, the kind that shapes uplifting real-life moments one person at a time. Later that day, Anna walked into Damien's high-rise apartment not as a guest, but as a partner. It wasn't glamorous. Damien didn't live like a man obsessed with wealth. His space was minimalist, warm, surprisingly unpolished. She walked through the hallway, touching the wood grain of the table, the worn edges of a bookshelf, the chipped ceramic of a coffee mug. It wasn't a castle. It was a home. "Most people expect gold ceilings," Damien said from behind her. "I was expecting less character." "You think I've character?" "I think you're figuring it out." They sat down by the window. The city stretched out before them, towering, relentless. And somewhere, far below, was the corner where they'd met. "I keep waiting to feel like I'm someone else," Anna said. "But you're not." "No," she said. "Just more seen." Damien nodded. "That's all I wanted. Not to change you. Just to show you that you never needed to be invisible." They spent that day away from cameras, headlines, and expectations. They cooked together, Anna's hands surprisingly confident with ingredients she hadn't touched in years. They laughed about the gala. They read. They watched the sky turn orange with evening. And in that quiet, something remarkable bloomed. Not the passion of fairy tales, but the steadiness of trust. Anna had always imagined that being loved meant being saved. But now she knew the truth. Love, real love, meant being understood. Not fixed, not polished, just accepted. That night, Damien sat at his desk, reading messages from donors, media outlets, even a senator. Offers to speak. Write a book. Appear on panels about helping others, everyday heroism, or the power of kindness. He shut his laptop. He didn't want to turn this into a brand. This wasn't content. It was connection. "Do you regret what you said?" Anna asked him from the couch. He turned toward her. "Not a word. You know they're going to keep watching us. Let them. I don't want to be anyone's project," she said softly. "You're not," he replied. "You're my compass." The television played in the background, a news anchor recapping the proposal, calling it one of the most feel-good moments of the year. Damien muted it. "People love inspirational content, don't they?" she said. "They love it until it challenges them," he answered. "But that's not our concern." The next day, Anna applied for a teaching license renewal. She wanted to work again, not because she had to, but because she could. And more importantly, because she had something to give. Her story wasn't just a headline. It was a living, breathing act of motivational resilience. It was proof that good deeds are rewarded, not with fanfare, but with healing, with belonging. Anna didn't want a pedestal. She wanted a purpose. And she had one now. She wasn't the woman from the corner anymore. She was the woman who walked through the fire and came out carrying light. 6 months later, the gala was just a memory. Not a myth. Not a spectacle. Just a single night that changed the direction of 2 lives. Anna stood at the front of a classroom, chalk dust on her fingers, her voice steady as she guided a room full of teenagers through a lesson on second chances in literature. Her students didn't know everything about her past, but they knew she spoke like someone who understood survival and grace. When the bell rang, one student lingered. "Miss Anna," he said, "is it true you used to be homeless?" She paused, then smiled. "Yes." He nodded. "That's cool." And just like that, the world turned forward again. No shame. No whispers. Just the truth, worn like a badge of honor. Outside the school, Damien waited by the gate. He leaned against the car, not a Bentley this time, just a modest hybrid, holding 2 coffees. One black, one with cinnamon and cream, just how Anna liked it. "You remembered," she said, taking the cup. "I listen," he replied. They walked together toward the city park. There was no paparazzi now. No reporters. Just wind and trees and the quiet rhythm of people living ordinary lives. But Anna had never felt more extraordinary. Their wedding had been small. No photographers. No celebrity guests. Just a handful of people who had loved them before the world noticed. It wasn't designed for headlines. It was designed for peace. In that ceremony, they promised not wealth, not perfection, but presence. Damien didn't vow to save Anna. He vowed to stand beside her. Anna didn't promise to forget the past. She promised to carry it with strength and use it as fuel to uplift others. Together, they had launched a foundation, not in their names, but in the spirit of everyday kindness. It helped displaced women find safe housing, job training, and above all, dignity. The work wasn't glamorous, but it was good, real, necessary. Anna didn't become a symbol. She became a servant, because the world didn't need another icon. It needed another human willing to show up. And she did, every single day. Her life had become a collection of uplifting moments, stitched together not by money, but by meaning. The kind of moments you find in motivational real-life examples, where kindness isn't broadcast, it's lived. She still walked past the corner where it all began. Sometimes she stopped, not to remember the pain, but to witness her own transformation. A moment of true life kindness, born not from wealth, but from choice. Damien often told her, "You didn't need saving." I did. He had built skyscrapers, brokered deals, and sat in rooms with the world's most powerful people. But it wasn't until he knelt beside her that night, on a street, and then at the gala, that he felt grounded. That moment, unscripted, raw, became more than a headline. It became a movement, a reminder that random acts of kindness still matter. That emotional storytelling is still the most powerful form of truth. That good deeds, when done without expectation, will echo farther than fame ever will. Now, people send letters from around the world, not to praise them, but to thank them for reminding others that kindness content isn't just viral. It's vital. That helping others doesn't require status, just attention. That positive storytelling is still possible, even in a noisy world. Their love didn't just restore their lives. It inspired thousands to look at others differently, to see the invisible, to choose compassion over comfort, to ask not, "What can I give to be seen?" but "Who can I see today without looking away?" And maybe that's the point. Because in the end, this wasn't a tale about a billionaire or a homeless woman. It was about the space between them and the courage it took to cross it. So if this story moved you, even just a little, don't let it end here. Let it begin with you. Be the one who notices. Be the one who stops. Be the one who asks, "Are you okay?" And if you can, be the one who offers a hand. Because the world doesn't change through speeches or ceremonies. It changes through you. Your small acts. Your open eyes. Your willingness to care. So let this be more than a video. Let it be the start of something real. Something human. Something kind. Clapperboard if this story touched your heart. Take a moment to give it a like. Share it with someone who needs to be reminded of the power of kindness. Subscribe to our channel for more real-life inspiration, emotional storytelling, and uplifting moments that prove humanity is still alive. Let's fill the internet with stories that don't just go viral, but go deep. Because the world doesn't need more noise. It needs more heart. And it starts right here with you.